get organised. Okay, so we're going to look today about, we're going to talk today about autonomy within the dystopian genre and the controlling of emotions. And I'm going to record it because some people are having issues with their Wi-Fi dropping in and out. So this might make sense to come back to later. So yeah, thank you to those of you who've handed your essays in. I am still missing one, aren't I, Sophie? So, and just a reminder that this is the evidence that I need to provide you with a grade this summer. But yeah, honestly, you're all working. And even if you're not getting there yet, then let me help you. Take my advice. And like I say, if you don't want me to share an essay, you're going to email me, and I will respect that decision. But let's move on now. So I'm sharing the slideshow with you. Much dystopian fiction presents the loss of autonomous thought and emotions as entirely crippling. What do we think about that as a question? Quite a bit hard work, a bit challenging, maybe?
Well, it feels like there's a lot of parts to it because you have to talk about autonomy and then thought and then emotions, and whether it's entirely crippling or just partially. And yeah, there is a lot going on there. There is
a lot going on. And I think the kind of way I'm going to help you get through, find a path through this essay is to think about not just like why does a dystopian regime want to prevent autonomy, and why would it want your emotions to be deadened almost? So, but let's start, if you would be so kind, as to tell me, like, in your lives, what do you value about having autonomy? And would the loss of your emotions be crippling? I'm going to give you an example. So the fact that I have complete autonomy, complete autonomy over how I raise my children. I think I have complete autonomy. I can even choose whether to send them to school, can't I? As long as I'm homeschooling them. So I guess there are parameters that I have to abide by. But yeah, if that were taken away from me, I would find that really, really difficult. What about you lot? What are your thoughts? What do you value about your autonomy?
Well, that's what makes you individual. So if you didn't have all that, it'd just be mechanical.
Right. So it's having the freedom to think the things that you want to think helps you develop your personality. Good. Gives you a chance to make mistakes. Yeah, that's important, isn't it? Yeah, and that's often a very challenging thing as a parent, is how much you let your kids make mistakes. Anybody else?
I don't necessarily believe in free will, but at least like the illusion of it gives us the kind of responsibility to have like the moral responsibility of our actions as an individual rather than as a kind of whole, a collective whole.
Moral responsibility, that's a really interesting point to raise, because autonomy that goes too far can be considered criminality, can't it? So even autonomy has to be kind of governed by a sense of morality. But what do you do when you're in a society whose morals are at odds with your personal beliefs? So that's a challenge. Anybody else? What do you most value having free thought over? The choices that you get to make. What's the most important one to you?
Maybe like our future in that.
Right. deciding whether you're going to go to uni, and if you are, where you're going to go. And yeah, anybody else?
I've always found that like control of my own mind is like the most important thing. Do you know what I mean? So like the thought of losing my free will surrounding my thoughts is would be the most damaging to me personally.
Yeah, but that's what. So Sam, what I'm asking is the thoughts over what in particular, like the thoughts over, because your thoughts can go from what shall I have for breakfast to your political beliefs. So of that range of thoughts, so you wake up tomorrow and you're allowed to choose every day what you have for breakfast, but you can't choose who to vote for. You're going to be told. That's the kind of distinction I'm asking people to think about.
But also, it's not just that the future's controlled, it's controlled how you interpret yourself in the past and how you view your memories.
Okay. Can you give me a bit more on that, Emily? Like what?
Well, I was thinking of the example of when Winston looks back on his mum and younger sister, because you wonder how much those memories have been influenced by the lens of the party.
Right.
And whether they're genuinely, truthful, or whether they've been twisted in such a way.
So in your own life then, Emily, what you're saying is that you value your access to your own memories, and that you feel like your memories are pretty like honest.
Yeah.
There are a lot of novels about that that would challenge that, and I think you'd find them quite interesting. A lot of postmodern fiction is about whether we can trust like our memories. There's Michael Frayn's novel Spies would be a good one to look at if you're interested in that, as would Ian McEwan's Enduring Love. Interesting. I
think the interesting, sorry, did I just interrupt you there?
No.
I was going to say, I think the interesting point to make is the fact that kind of dystopian regimes present the actual having of autonomous thought as the thing that's entirely crippling, rather than vice versa. I mean, like reading Handmaid's Tale is entirely crippling, but that's at least through our own autonomy. Sorry, I'll mute myself now. But you get the point.
It's in a way you don't have autonomy over that, do you? I've told you have to read it. You were reading it for an exam, but.
Well, exactly. But you told me that it would be entirely crippling for me if I didn't read it.
Do you know, I had a dream last night that I was at work and we were being given a presentation by a journalist who had all these post-it notes stuck to his arm, and he didn't really know what he was talking about, and you lot were all sitting behind me, and you were all getting really restless and shuffling around, and I turned round and you were moving, Harry, and I was like, what's he doing now? And you were like, I just need to go and have a cuddle with Max. You'd moved the seats along so that you and Max could cuddle. It was so sweet. I just thought there was lots of crisps in the dream. I think maybe I'm getting hungry.
I was gonna say, do I haunt you even in your dreams? Like, I'm not worried now.
I don't even have the autonomy to escape you. There were lots of other students in it as well. It wasn't just you, but it was just the fact that you'd moved to have a cuddle. You didn't even say hug. You had to cuddle with Max. That was adorable. Okay, so we've started to move our discussion on to the dystopian fiction. Emily's made a really lovely point there about the autonomy, the freedom that we have to access our own memories. I hadn't thought about that, but that's really powerful. The thing I was going to say is that often in me and my sister are now in our 40s, and the differences we have in kind of remembering things from our pasts. And I asked her last night, this was really random, and I said to her, what's the worst thing Mum used to cook? And I said, do you remember when she used to cook those Dale steaks? And we had this really random conversation about food from our past and what we could and couldn't remember. So memory is still very subjective, and the truth of a memory and the importance of memories, something that's maybe so important to you, and someone else in your family or a friend can't even remember it. It's powerful, and the state, repressive states and regimes know this, and so they seek to control that as well. So I'm just going to move on. So why would dystopian regimes, let's just do a little bit of writing here. Why do they want to control autonomous thought? What's going on with this emotions thing and it being crippling? So if you want to like type some responses in the chat, just tell me something about those ideas.
Should I just define autonomous thought? Is that what you want me to do? Did you want me to define autonomous thought, or do I just put it in the chat?
No, I don't want you to define autonomous thought. Are we all right that we know what autonomous thought means? The freedom to think your own thoughts, make your own decisions accordingly. No, I'm asking why would dystopian regimes want to stop you having autonomy, and what are dystopian regimes doing with people's emotions? Why do they want to remove people's emotions? Right, so it's about rebellion, isn't it? It's about the fact that if you are thinking your own things, then what you can think is along the lines of dissent. Thank you. Anybody else? Right, so the loss of emotion isolates people. Good. So the control of emotions, channeling them somewhere else. Lovely, Katie. Right, so so emotions can lead us to act on instinct. We don't want that. Breaking someone's will makes them a blank canvas for you to change them. I mean, it hasn't worked on Harry. I've tried so hard. But he's resisted every step. Anybody else? Okay. Yeah, so freedom to have your own thought is also the freedom to rebel. So this is from Lit Charts. You've got the Lit Charts on the Handmaid's Tale. I think they used to be free, but now they're charging for them. So I've just borrowed this from them. And this just sums up some of the thoughts that we've been having. One way a totalitarian regime seeks to stay in power is by denying human beings their individuality, eradicating independent thought through the use of propaganda and terror. Throughout 1984, Winston tries to assert his individual nature against the collective identity the party wishes him to adopt. He keeps it private. So now it's listing the ways in which he tries to assert that identity. He keeps a private diary. He engages in a forbidden sexual relationship and insists that his version of reality is the truth. That's really, really important. Apparently there's like a Star Trek episode based on this as well. I'm not a Star Trek fan, but that's what I've been, where Jean-Luc Picard refuses to say that 2 and 2 equals 5. Instead of going to the community centre or participating in social groups, he wanders the Pearl neighbourhoods and seeks solitude in his apartment, engaging in behaviour the party calls own life and considers dangerous. What do we have? What in our society do we call own life? Anyone? I'm being a bit quieter as well, sorry, because the child is napping below me, in the room below. He's not under the desk. What's it called when you when you spend time on your own, just doing things that you want to do.
Could you just say like enjoying your own company, his own life?
Yeah. We've got a phrase for it though, haven't we? We say that we're going to have some
me time.
me time. Yeah. We say that we're
I
going to
think I was like making that too basic there.
No, I think that's what it is, and to me, I think it's really interesting that that's something that we're like, oh, yeah, I think you need some me time. I'm not a believer in me time in the way that it's presented in our society. I think it's just another capitalist kind of prop to get us to buy shit for me time. I don't know what you lot do for me time, but I'm perfectly happy just reading a book, thanks. It's back to Harry in the bubble bath, isn't it? So here in our society, it's something that I think is manipulated in order to sell us something. Because actually, if we lived, you could argue that if we lived in a nice kind of society where we didn't have to work ourselves to the bone, that we wouldn't need me time, because we'd be feeling pretty fulfilled by our lives, and we would have time in the day to go for a nice walk and to kind of do our yoga, etc. So
I think the problem with it isn't necessarily the actual concept of it, but like just the way that it's branded. I mean, like own life or me time, it's sort of entirely subjective. So
yeah.
I guess I agree with what you were saying, but I don't think it's necessarily the concept in either our society or dystopian societies that's the inherent problem, but more the way that it's perceived by.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. I think it is incredibly valuable that you nourish and sustain yourself. But if we lived in a society where that was built into the fabric of our society, if we didn't have a society where it's encouraged that we take a lunch at our desks and we work right through and we do extra hours and we have to work 2 jobs because the minimum wage is not a living wage. So it's how it's branded, right? But that's own life. I mean, that in itself is such a powerful phrase, isn't it? Because it's seen as something negative and wrong.
I think it's weird that it has like a name at all, as though like it's a luxury to have that subjectivity, as if like every time someone goes off to work or we go to college, like we're selling a bit of ourselves to this kind of collective regime. So yeah, it's weird that would even be given a name in the first place, I guess.
Yeah, being identified. Okay, so what I'd like you to do now then, as I've chosen 2 sections of the book to discuss in relation to the idea of the loss of autonomous thought, and I'd like you to do some work on this. It's going to feel a bit awkward if you're watching the lesson later on, because I can't pause it and then come back. In the old days, he thought, a man looked at a girl's body and saw that it was desirable, and that was the end of the story. But you could not have pure love or pure lust nowadays. No emotion was pure, because everything was mixed up with fear and hatred. Their embrace had been a battle, the climax of victory. It was a blow struck against the party. It was a political act. That's the first one that you're going to make some notes on. And then this one, the terrible thing that the party had done was to persuade you that mere impulses, mere feelings were of no account, while at the same time robbing you of all power over the material world. When once you were in the grip of the party, what you felt or did not feel, what you did or refrained from doing, made literally no difference. Whatever happened, you vanished, and neither you nor your actions were ever heard of again. So I'm just going to mute my mic and give you a few minutes to make some notes on those. Okay. I know that's not masses of time and you're probably all scribbling away. But have we got any responses to this?
I just said about with the first one, the one on like the left, that the dystopian societies try and control human desire and everything, which is something that we can't really control. Like how it says that about that was what's desirable, but you can't have pure love or lust now. Like you can't really control that. It's just something that ourselves can't control. So how do you expect like a outside person to control it for us?
Right, so it's such a human desire, is such a kind of natural human instinct that even we find difficult to control ourselves, maybe. So the fact that the state is trying to manage that tells you the extremes to which they're going to go. Yeah, lovely, Piper. Anybody else? Well, that's nice, Dave, linking it to...
Sorry. You read it. I'll stop. Do you want me to put my hand up? Because I only realised that was a function like a week ago, and then I was like, whoa.
It might help us like not talk over each other a little bit. But yeah, Daisy, that's good. Okay, go, Harry.
I was going to talk about the way that the political kind of starts to intrude on the social. The fact that it's portrayed as a political act when really it's more of a kind of social, because it's infringing on people's own rights, I guess, if that makes sense. Because it's interesting the way that it says, wait, what does it say? Nothing is pure, everything was mixed up with fear and hatred. It's like these own terms which are used to describe the kind of discontent with the party is used by the party to kind of further their own ends, if that makes sense. I mean, like they're kind of geared toward portraying people negatively using these terms by just kind of opposing the party.
Yeah.
So no emotion, because it's kind of, how do you possibly tell what's opposing the party and what's supporting it when what's opposing it is used to further it?
There's an essence here, isn't there, that because Winston can't even just go, this is really nice that I've had sex with this woman, like there's a sense of his indoctrination being prevalent, because he's like, and I've had sex with this woman, but it was a political act, it was a blow against the party. So that there's like a paradox there. So Holly and then Ellie, please. Holly. Thank you, Harry.
I said how when everything's mixed up with fear and hatred, maybe that makes people hesitant to actually feel emotion.
Yeah. Yeah. That they start to self-govern themselves anyway.
Yeah, and because they're constantly attending the community centre and 2 minutes hit and stuff, they have no own time to collect their emotions.
Yeah, that's it. Don't leave people alone with their thoughts, basically. Yeah, lovely. Ellie, then Emily. Thanks, Holly.
I just kind of had a bit about how like it made no difference that you vanish, about how the altering of the past corrupts the memories. And I start to think about like how Serena offers Offred the picture of a daughter, and that something physical, it's how you were saying about how a memory is still subjective, and like all of them, both Offred and Winston still need something physical to validate their thoughts.
Yeah, something tangible.
Yeah, I was just like, I think I cut myself off there. I was just saying, I was just thinking about like memory and like in actual like physical, tangible, like when he sees the like picture of the newspaper, it's only then that he actually like feels truly validated, rather than his own memories.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Ellie. Emily?
I was just going to add to what you and Harry were saying about when he says that it was a political act, because I think that shows like the hopelessness of his situation, because even when he's trying to rebel, he feels this real like pressure and duty to say that everything is him being proactive against the party. So they've won either way, because either he's vacant and he's doing nothing, or he's actively trying to rebel against them, but he's still not doing anything for himself and for his feelings.
I think that's what I was trying to articulate. They've won either way. Holly, is your hand back up or just not lowered from last time?
I forgot to lower it.
Right, okay. No, just checking. Okay, right, lovely answers there. Good stuff. Could we start to consider the role of OBrien? So I'm very much enjoying reading this book when I have some own time. And Sarah Cole's written an essay in here called Orwell and the Dictator. And she suggests that that O'Brien is kind of Winston's like personal dictator. But just wondered what you made of this suggestion here. O'Brien is a world destroyer whose deep understanding of the nature of psychology and the state allows him to eradicate one in the name of the other. What are your thoughts on that? I was just messaging Dean then, by the way, if you wondered what I was doing. Just checking he's all right. Is there a lot of thinking going on, or has that thrown you a little bit? Or are you all typing? Tweddle, I haven't heard from you. Hebe, you've been quiet. Who else do I want to hear from? Logan, where are you? Jessie, you're quiet. Sophie, I think you're back in the meeting, I'm not sure. Hi, let's have some ideas. I'm now assuming everyone's typing, I'm not sure. Right now I'm doubting myself. I feel like you've all gone for your lunch. When you say how would you shorten this, do you mean the bit above that you've just written, or this quotation by Sarah Cole? Right, Holly, I think that's a really good interpretation of it, that the world that's being destroyed. So Daisy, what we're going to do here is just kind of that you can kind of paraphrase it, yeah? So you would say, I think we can remember the bit that O'Brien is a world destroyer. Sarah Cole suggests that, quotation, O'Brien is a world destroyer, comma, suggesting that his ability to understand the psychological nature of citizens who wish to rebel can be used against them in order to destroy the version of the world they've built in their own head. So being able to use a critic can only happen when you understand what the critic is saying and think about whether you agree or disagree with it. Yeah, Logan, that's lovely. And so one of the reasons that O'Brien can do that is that he's able to understand where they're coming from. So ironically, O'Brien has autonomy, but as long as it's in the service of the party, it's okay. Yeah, and because Winston trusts him, so that's his understanding of the psychology, isn't it? It's building up that rapport, that trust. Okay, some people might also be typing. I'm just going to move on, just conscious of time. So again, I've pulled out a couple of ideas from the Handmaid's Tale. I think the first one's pretty obvious, but maybe if we just look at the second one together. Offred writes, he doesn't mind this, I thought. He doesn't mind it at all. Maybe he even likes it. We are not each other's anymore. Instead, I am his. So how might I use that quotation from the Handmaid's Tale, or that section, in an essay about autonomy and emotions? Ellie?
I did that accidentally. My button got stuck. I'm sorry. I was trying to fix it.
Okay. Anybody else? Who's she talking about there? Who doesn't mind this? What don't they mind? Emily?
It's the bit, isn't it, where the government is slowly kind of implementing all of these different laws where the women all got fired from their jobs and then all the books are being burned and stuff. And she's talking about how she feels that Luke isn't, the fact that he should care about her, but he isn't making a big deal of it.
Yeah, it's exactly that. And when she says, we are not each other's anymore, instead I am his. There's a real shift there, isn't there? The insecurity created by a loss of physical independence has a knock-on effect on thoughts. So she doubts her mental autonomy. That's nice, Holly. Anybody else? Okay. So I just wanted to, this is just a tiny little bit, again, it's from this Cambridge Companion. So in a radio broadcast in 1941, Orwell said, we live in an age in which the autonomous individual is ceasing to exist. I'm just going to read you the whole thing. In 1949, when the novel was published, the total loss of human freedom seemed plausible given the annihilations of the previous decade, and Orwell wondered throughout the 1940s about the survivability of the individual at all. In a radio broadcast on literature and totalitarianism aired in 1941, he reluctantly declared that we live in an age in which the autonomous individual is ceasing to exist, close quotations, and that totalitarianism, which he foresees as moving to encompass the world, open quotations, has abolished freedom of thought to an extent unheard of in any previous age. So this is something really close to Winston. This is Orwell. This is something that he feels has happened and is continuing to happen. And I wonder, I guess I wonder how we feel about our own ability to have autonomous thought. I often feel like autonomous thought is a bit useless if the political systems in your country are not set up to allow you to kind of have power that comes with them. I think Twitter's a good kind of example of that. Loads of people having loads of opinions, nothing changing. It can be very depressing. Piper?
Wasn't there something not long ago where it was like schools aren't supposed to put like their political views, like they can't say anything about politics or anything, but like they're not, like I think that's like loss of autonomous thought because you can't really express how you feel, which means other people can't really get educated on something.
Yeah.
So I feel like
I think it was more about being careful not to just promote one political view at the exclusion of others, and to create a space where you can discuss things. I think it was, and perhaps applied more to secondary schools. I mean, it's impossible to avoid these discussions at A level in these kinds of subjects, isn't it? So that's a little bit of AO3 for you that I thought you would find interesting. And then I don't know how confident I feel developing this AO5. This might be something I want you to kind of think about for me as well. So Sarah Cole writes, the individual then is a transitional actor who galvanizes and articulates world forces and directions, eventually to be nullified once the revolution has succeeded. So I just need to kind of try and contextualize this a bit. And if it doesn't work, we're just going to back away from it. So Sarah Cole, like many critics of Orwell, of people who are writing critically, academically about Orwell, acknowledge the influence that H.G. Wells had on him. H.G. Wells is someone who, if you've come across, you might be thinking of like The Time Machine, War of the Worlds, but he was a phenomenally influential figure, a prolific writer. He was a bit of a kind of cult social celebrity. He was a larger than life figure, and he predominantly wrote about kind of utopias, but his view, and Orwell read all of his stuff and was very influenced by him. But like the difference is that for Wells, a utopia came about kind of by like an extreme form of socialism, not communism, but that it came about when everyone was working for the common good and everyone, so a little bit of kind of loss of identity and autonomy, but because it's all working for the best. Those of you who read Herland with me, maybe in the summer, would recognise where Gilman is kind of doing a similar thing. But for Orwell, it was about maintaining that sense of identity that you can work for a common good, but the individual that is there, that human freedom, the sovereignty of the individual, the ability to control your own thoughts. So Wells wrote this novel, The Holy Terror, in 1939. Again, all of Wells's stuff you can read online for free, and I have pulled out a section of this for us to do for wider reading if we want to, in which a charismatic English dictator attempts to become a world leader. So this guy becomes the leader of England, and then he's trying, but he, as he gets more powerful, he becomes more paranoid, anti-Semitic, and he gets so big and so powerful that he's eventually assassinated. And that's what Cole's talking about there, that galvanizing and pulling like the country together might on some level be a good thing, but then that individual needs to be removed. Whereas what Orwell's doing in 1984, and bet you're glad now that I'm recording this, I'm going to have to listen to that again, is that the personality of Big Brother has to be perpetuated. And she writes, only by elevating one fictional person can the personhood of all others be destroyed. So they're kind of saying similar things in that you've got these figureheads, you've got these kind of cult identities, but Big Brother is fictional. OBrien's real, but Big Brother isn't. And the kind of the paradoxical focus on that one fictional identity has to be maintained in order to eradicate others. What do you think of that?
So basically, because Big Brother isn't real, there isn't actually a threat to him and he can't become paranoid, so the party will just continue to be powerful.
Yes. Emily?
It's weird because you wonder the same thing about, what do you call him? Goldstein. How you wonder if the people who are rebelling are just as conscious as the party that timeless and fictional figures are the things that can last. So even though they're rebelling, they're still utilising the same techniques to bring people together. So you wonder that if the novel continued and that the Brotherhood was eventually successful, if you like, you'd just be back to square one. with that idolising that fictional figure.
Yeah, and just replacing one dictator with another.
Yeah.
Yeah, good. Ellie?
I was just thinking, was it the BBC Sounds thing you made us listen to?
He just listened to, yeah.
Where I've lost it now, but they were talking about Goldstein, and I literally can't remember it. What was the point you were just making, Emily? And it's somehow tied into that. I'm pretty sure I can't remember.
About how Goldstein's like a timeless figure, and that.
Yeah, Bethany's got it about how like Putin, how he like replacing his enemies with stuff, and it's kind of like that with Goldstein. Like he's necessary to the survival of Big Brother.
Yes, and there's a mythologization of both Goldstein and Big Brother, isn't there? You can't defeat something that's not real, but the threat of them, the terror of them, is real. That's why it's really hard to defeat them. Lovely, Ellie. Harry?
It's quite interesting, that idea about it being fictional, because there's kind of that denial, kind of holding them this kind of mythical status. Have you ever read the Sinclair Lewis novel "It Could Never Happen Here" or "It Can't Happen Here"?
I haven't. I know of it, but I haven't read it now.
Yeah, because like throughout the whole thing, as this kind of tyrannical figure comes to power, the refrain throughout the novel is "It can't happen here." So the population kind of stays in denial of this possibility of someone coming to power. So I think the idea of this kind of fictional person, or this fictional brotherhood, a Big Brother, being perpetuated is quite interesting, in the sense that the population themselves are partly responsible in their own sort of denial of that power, and the way that they can be so manipulated, which is the reason why I guess autonomous thought is so attacked, because they let it happen through their own autonomous thought by denying themselves it in the first place.
Yeah, it's pretty. I mean, look, what I do want to say, guys, is if you've kind of read through that and thought, or listened, I'm not really sure where that's going, it just kind of let it percolate for a little bit. If it doesn't make any sense, leave it kind of completely. Sorry. I'm glad that you're making links with the BBC Sounds thing. Have I mentioned? I'm just conscious we've got about 2 minutes left of the lesson. Have I mentioned about the comparative classroom for the comparative coursework? Just making sure that everybody's in there, and I have just posted a link in there to the BBC who are doing Oranges at the moment, so you can have a listen to Oranges as well. I'm going to have a listen to it. Look, it sounds really good. Right there, I think that's the last slide. Yes, it is. Whew, we've got through a lot there. Well done. Again, you continue to impress me. Your attendance is fantastic. The essays you're writing are great. We're in week 4. I know it's rubbish, but yeah, you're doing fantastically. So I need you to check in tomorrow. So I'll start a meeting off, just so that I can do the register. I'd like you to check in, and then if anyone does want to just have like a one-to-one or a chat or anything, we can do that as well. Otherwise, we are done.